Welcome back, Curious Hearts. I'm Vera. This is episode 27, and it's my interview with Michelle Cassandra Johnson. Michelle is an extraordinary teacher. She's a yoga teacher and a writer and a spiritual guide and a facilitator. And I have had this really deep privilege of learning with her about using anti-racist principles when we're teaching yoga and in yoga studios. I have learned about the bees and how they communicate and commune with us, and also about really deep and rich ancestral practice. Our conversation is wide and sweeping and rich and nourishing, and I hope you will feel nourished by it. Her wisdom and her experience as she has navigated her own really unique spiritual path is a gift to all of us. I also am really excited to share with you something else that I have been working on, and it's emerged from my work on the podcast. And it is, I think, the next evolution of Curious Hearts. Many of you may know, if you've been listening for a while, that the podcast came out of a book that I wrote to help me discern my own personal spiritual principles and the practices that I thought were universal. But what you might not know is that I wrote the book because I had been really wanting to create some kind of community or collective, a gathering of people who came together around spiritual principles and spiritual life. And when I asked myself what I wanted us to come around, how I wanted us to gather, I realized that I needed to be more clear. So then I wrote the book, and then I started the podcast. And now it's time to come back around full circle to Curious Hearts, the gathering, or maybe even Curious Hearts, the congregation. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, I want to invite you to just sign up in the link that's attached here. It'll just give me an idea about who might be interested. And I'm thinking that we will launch it in March of 2026. So even if you're listening to this podcast after that, there's still an opportunity for you to join us. I can't wait to hear what you all have to think about this episode with Michelle, and I wish you the deepest blessings as we transition into this new year, and welcome back. Y'all, welcome back. I can't even tell you how honored and almost verklempt I am to be having this conversation with Michelle. Michelle Cassandra Johnson is a magical worker of light and spirit, and I had the great pleasure of meeting her through Wild Lotus when we were doing some anti-racist work at the studio, and being in a room with Michelle Cassandra Johnson, you feel the full, it's like all the texture of life is there. There's a sense of skillfulness and experience, mixed with groundedness and all of the things. I'm going to try not to overwhelm you before we start. But I have so much respect for your work and your voice in the world. And I'm just so excited to get to share that with some other folks. So.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be in community with you, really, and conversation with you, and for the sweet introduction. And I'm just so glad we're here now in this space, but also on the planet now. And I actually think about that a lot. And I know we don't see each other in physical space very much, but I think about you a lot, and also see you as a light worker and a truth teller and a holder of this massive transformation we've been in for quite some time. So glad we're co-conspirators in this humaning. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, I will accept that mantle of co-conspirator. There need to be a lot of us. There need to be a lot of us doing this work. So
that's right.
Is there anything that you want to share before we dive in?
Well, my name's Michelle, and my pronouns are she and her. And I live on the ancestral land of the Catawba, Cherokee, Tutelo, Saponi, Occaneechi, and many other tribes in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it is a, today, sort of cloudy day. And I just went to visit my mom, who just moved into assisted living. So I share that because that has been my life for actually a long time. That's how I'm coming into the space and where I am on the planet.
Yeah. And our little friend Jasper just appeared behind you.
Yeah,
I'm so
there he
excited
is.
about that. I have my little animal friends with us too. So
Yes.
I will start us the same place I start everyone, which is, what was your spiritual and or religious life like growing up?
It's so, I knew you were going to ask this question. And an hour ago, my mother and I had a conversation about death and God and God's plan that I didn't bring up. My mother brought it up because one of her friends is going to transition soon and is also making choices about how that transition happens. And my mom had a lot of feelings about it. And so we got to talk about it. And it has everything to do with her upbringing in the church, which is also the same church where I grew up and spent every Sunday until I was 18. And so I grew up as a Baptist in a Black Baptist church in the South in Virginia, Glen Allen, Virginia. And as many people understand, the Black church, particularly in the South, is this place of fellowship and worship and also community and collective care and organizing, movement spaces. Churches are movement spaces. And so I just share this context because I didn't really understand all of that until I was about 18, how much went into the church. I felt it in my body, but I didn't understand, this space functions in all of these ways. And in some ways, it's been the safe harbor for my people and my roots and lineage and where I'm from. And I learned a lot in that experience of growing up in that church. I learned a lot about living into questions and critical thinking, and I learned a lot about devotion, particularly from my grandmother, Dorothy, my maternal grandmother, who was a church usher, and I actually have her ushering gloves on my ancestor altar. After she transitioned, I gathered those and her Bible has thumbprints on it where she opened it. And it's like well used, right? It was her daily devotional. So I have those things from her. And I remember I witnessed her in her service within the church, but also as a deep devotee of God. That is the name that she would call what I call God, Spirit, Goddess, Moon, Water, Sun, all of those things. But God is what she called Creator and who she believed in. And I learned a lot from her about prayer and faith. And so believing in something that I may not be able to see, but that can be felt on a cellular level, like the energy of God, Goddess, Creator, Spirit, the divine can be felt within our cells and bones and tissues. And I watched that happen for her. I also watched this happen for my mom as well. And the way my mom would express within her, I guess, on her spiritual path, and particularly within church, she would sort of talk about her connection with Spirit as God having a plan. And this is where I get into trouble because I believe that there is a great mystery that is unfolding, a cosmic unfolding, which feels like it's the same language as God's plan. And also,
Right.
I'm like, is this God's plan? And then I get into trouble, but I also feel like I understand why my mother, my grandmother, even me, right, myself, even I understand why at times I would need to, or my grandmother needed to, or my mom still needs to believe there's a plan, believe there's an unfolding, that we are not in control of, to try to make sense of the things that actually don't make sense. The horrific things that happen. That's how I hear my mom when she says, God has a plan. And she said it an hour ago to me. I don't get to choose when I leave here. And I was like, well, what about quality of life, Mom? She said, well,
You want to choose that?
yeah. I was like, okay. And she's like, well, I do feel sorry for people who are suffering. And I wanted to say, and I didn't, well, you're suffering too in all of these ways. And, the like curious part of me, and there just wasn't the time or place. The curious part of me was like, is this God? Do you believe this is God's plan? Like chronic illness and pain for 30 years and Alzheimer's? Is this God's plan?
Right.
So I'm just early in our conversation raising the, I think, paradox and of what it means to be human and spiritual, and to be curious and have questions and also believe in something bigger, which is something I learned growing up on my spiritual path. As much as I at times disliked going into the sort of structure of church and a minister telling me what to believe and who was good and who wasn't. I mean, I remember being a young child wondering, why is he talking about these groups of people in this negative way? And then in the moment later, he's talking about God loves all of God's children. I was very like, this doesn't add up, dude.
Right.
It doesn't work. So I was curious and also made choices. And I'm grateful for my mother and my grandmother for this, because while they believed in God and going into this church space in this community, they didn't tell me what to believe. They just felt like I needed a grounding in what it means to be devoted to something bigger, and what it means to be in community, and what it means to be of service. And so they allowed me to ask questions like, why did the minister say this? And they would sort of entertain that and say, I don't know, or they didn't tell me I was wrong for having questions. So questions are part of my spiritual path for that reason. And I deeply appreciate the space they gave me to figure out who I was, even as a young child, as a spiritual being. Of course, that has expanded throughout time, which we can dive into. And then I think after 18, because that was the age my mom was like, you must go to church until you're 18. I still went with her some, but not nearly as much. And I would now describe myself as someone who's interspiritual, which we can lean into and I'll share more about. I do want to mention one thing about my spiritual path growing up that feels like it's showing up now in a much more profound way. My favorite part of church was the singing. It was the choir. It was like vibratory, right? I could feel it sort of transmuted all of the questions. It was just like, all right, here we are in the vibration of it. And I could feel that, and the resonance and the ancestral resonance come through in the voices of people in the choir. Like I could feel lineage through voice and vibration. And I feel like that devotion and service, of course, have stuck with me, and prayer and like offering, and also song and vibration, and how we can shift conditions through vibration. And that shows up in many ways for me, through chanting and kirtan, through beekeeping and humming, right? It feels like the thread, one of the threads, right? Because there are others, but a significant thread that it feels emergent now is this vibration and song, and using the voice to call in or to conjure or to harness energy, to move energy.
Yeah, part of the thing I wanted to ask is like, how did church feel to you as, a little person growing up in the world? Like, was it a place that you look forward to going? Was it a place of community and like warmth and connection? All of those questions. Like, what was it like?
Well, I think it was definitely a place of community. And it was one of the, my mother sent us, my brother and I, to private school. And so I was the only Black girl in my class until ninth grade. And I named that because I went to a Black Baptist church. And the other place I went where there were only Black folks like me was ballet class. And so every other space besides my home, my grandmother's house, right, like, and church and ballet were predominantly white spaces that I was placed in and then navigated and moved through. And in church, I definitely heard the message. While I had questions about the minister and some of his messaging, I heard messages about you're worthy, you're valuable, your Blackness is beautiful, you are good just as you are. Like, that was a strong foundation. I mean, it was part of what it meant to be in community and to go to church and be in communion with one another, I would say, was this affirmation of who we were and are just because. And in the world, and in predominantly white spaces, that was not the message that I received at all. And so I think that I'm so grateful that I think my mom knew that would happen. I just, in my like young child body, didn't understand that. It was later in reflection that I thought, oh, this is why Mom felt it was important for me to go to this particular church where she grew up and was in church all week long, and where she went to Bible study, because she knew I would receive the messages I needed to be able to face this world that I was navigating in my little Black girl body. Yeah, so it felt warm in that way. It felt affirming. It felt like family, community and family.
Yeah. I don't know why this feels like an important question to ask, but did that little Black girl have any sense about where you would be now? Like,
it's funny. Maybe that's God's plan. I'm just going to say, like, maybe that
right?
was the plan. I'm just going to, maybe that's part of the great unraveling and the mystery of it all. That in reflection, I remember like being 6 and feeling affirmed and didn't know I was going to be an anti-racism trainer, but maybe there was a larger cosmic unfolding.
Yeah.
That my mother even, maybe she was privy to that, or my grandmother, like, Michelle's going to need this kind of medicine to be able to, yeah, I mean, maybe they had a greater understanding, I'm sure they did, than I did, and maybe there was something bigger at play.
I'm also thinking about your role as a spiritual teacher and leader.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like to have to hear, the pastor and minister like say some things and you're like, I'm not really sure about that. And then to be the person saying like, okay, actually that needs to be a different message. It needs to be, shared differently.
Yeah. I think I love this because I think my grandmother, I mentioned her ushering gloves, and I was with her when she transitioned, and I have another pair of her gloves that I remember her wearing during winter, and have coats of hers, and I have hats. I have things that I can wear of hers. And often I've thought about her hands because I held her hand. And I feel like in so many ways, like, I've gone back to school for spiritual direction. She had, I'm sure that was my grandmother Dorothy. Because I didn't even know what spiritual direction was when I got the message that was what I was doing next. Like, it just dropped in, and then I had to look it up and say, what is this thing that I'm about to do? I've never even seen a spiritual director. I didn't know this was a field of study, even as a spiritual practitioner and teacher. Didn't know what that was. And so I just think my grandmother has her hands on me, around me, and like in this. And she is weaving with me, and probably God, as she would say, and the universe, as I would say, to like place me where I need to be. I just trust that.
Yeah.
So
I
think it has everything to do with it.
Yeah. That one of the things I have studied with you and been inspired by you is how vocal and communicative you have always been about your connection to your lineage, both spiritual but also your ancestral lineage, and how inspiring that has been to me in my own practices. And that I like want to like deeply encourage and invite other white folks to be doing that, being connected to those who went before us in their specific stories and with a mystical connection to them is like invaluable. It has been so profound for me to dig into that.
And I mean, I think, yes, for white-bodied folks, that feels like essential. I think it's also essential for us all. And what I've experienced is this at times for white body folks distancing from lineage because of the harm. And then across difference, how can we even talk about that? Right. And yet I think we need the ancestors. Like, we need the healthy and well ancestors. We also may need to do some repair, the ones that weren't as healthy and well, if we choose to do that kind of work. That's a choice. I don't think we have to carry that burden or take that on. And yet that's part of me too. And so how can we, I just feel like it's so critical that we, instead of distance, that we figure out how to like bridge this gap where we have agency and we can set boundaries. I don't mean doing this in a boundaryless way.
Right.
And I also think pacing is important with ancestral work because it can open up a lot, and then we receive a lot of communication or information, or we don't know what it is and are trying to integrate that into our lives now. And yet I think the ancestors speak through us and to us and with us all of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, part of my experience in that, like, the woundedness, the unwell, right, is it acknowledges like the breadth and depth of our own existence. Mm-hmm. Right. For me, one of the most profound spiritual journeys was one of collecting my whole self, right? Not just my good parts.
Yeah.
Right. The part of me that has, made some questionable choices, and done things I'm not proud of, that for a long time I would have, I just sort of, it was kind of had blinders about. Mm-hmm. And there is something, and it feels important on an individual level for me, but also a collective level for us to just be like, we just need to be really present and honest to like the full reality of what has happened, of who we are, of where we are in this moment. And I totally hear you. And like, you can't just like open those floodgates because it's so much. But yeah, moving through that, I think, is tremendously powerful and healing, right? Individually, interpersonally,
and collectively. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a thank you for going on that little tangent. You were starting to say when you turned 18.
Yeah.
And your mom said you have to go to this church until you turned 18. Then what happened?
So many things happened. And the short version of these things is that when I was 18, I went to college. And so I would go back home and go to church with my mom out of respect for her and my grandmother, which I feel great about. That was a good decision. And also to listen to the singing and to take in that vibration and be reaffirmed, I'm sure, for all of those reasons. And then I went to graduate school in social work right after college. And I had practiced yoga before, but it had not been presented as a spiritual path. And then when I started to go practice when I was in graduate school for social work, it was presented as a spiritual path to me. And it made me very curious. This teacher who was reading from a translation of the Yoga Sutras and from other texts as well, made me wonder, what is this path? It's not just, for me, it's not just movement in the body, that's part of it, but he was teaching, I'd say, the full path. And there are different ways we might describe that, but he was teaching movement, he was teaching breath, he was offering yoga philosophy. He led kirtans and chanting. He invited us into svadhyaya, self-study. Like, he shared that, and it just opened the door for me because it felt like, while church was affirming, this felt like a really deeply resonant, expansive path that could hold me and all of the questions that I find myself sitting with, or that show up for me or emerge for me. It felt like this path that could respond to that had, yoga in my experience has a structure. And so there are some, I'm going to say boundaries, but I really mean there's an infrastructure to the path. Like, we practice these specific things. And then these things might result, or maybe not, right? We see what happens, but there's discipline in my experience of yoga involved, and also this container to hold us, but also some soft boundaries for us to grow into the spiritual beings we are, whatever that might look like. And often it's a nonlinear path. And so I'd say my spiritual path since 18 and even prior to that, but my mom was making most of the decisions before I was 18, has been a nonlinear path. And how I describe myself now is as interspiritual. So like I practice yoga and teach yoga and teach the philosophy, and am devoted to this path of yoga and living my yoga. And I also practice shamanic practices, and I also work with the Akasha, and I also do a lot of intuitive healing practice and work. And then this spiritual direction work, which I purposefully went to a program that is interspiritual, so pulls from all of these different lineages, including paganism or no lineage at all. And this kind of feels interspiritual, feels like it resonates as a term for me, and there may be another term, right? It's like I want to be open to the different ways spirit moves, and also the names people have for spirit, or no name at all, like whatever that is. And I really yearn to work within myself and with others, how we can bring spirit or the sacred or the divine or nature, I'm using all of these interchangeably, into our lives more fully. So I think my path, I've learned with many different teachers, yoga teachers, shamanic teachers, intuitive healing teachers, and Akashic teachers, and now it's sort of all mixed in together, so that I have many different tools and places to pull from to help me ground amid the cosmic unfolding, which can feel quite chaotic and disorganizing, right?
Yeah. There are so many places that I could go from here, and I'm going to try and hold my tongue.
You don't have to.
Well, no, because part of what I'm thinking about is like that notion of like, I think of one of my spiritual principles is this notion of order, right? And so using words like infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Or unfolding, like that, like the world is fucking chaotic, right?
Oh my
Shit
gosh.
is happening and moving all the time. And without a sense of, A and then B and then C, right? There is a way of feeling just unmoored, right? Of feeling
Right.
lost. And the paradox that you talked about in the very beginning about like honoring faith while still having question, right? It's like your faith says you do A and then B and then C and then D.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you go like, we do none of those things, and something else, 1, 2, 3 are happening.
Right.
And it's the first time that it has come forward. It's the first time that's come forward. I love it. She has this like
Delilah. I
She
know.
has this like chewing bark that is like the cutest thing ever.
Like a whole sentence.
It's a whole sentence. She's saying a whole thing. She's
Yes.
talking to people who are outside. This notion of like order, right? That like our spiritual life creates. It's not only a sense of meaning, but like kind of puts things inside of a structure so that we can relate to it, and that's important. That matters.
Yes.
Right. It's not an accident.
That's right. Right. I mean, I talk about yoga and as an ancient technology, like which means there's some structure to it and order. And I think that is to help us find balance, ultimately, not just individually in my little fun, my piece, but in the world, which to me feels aligned with the laws of nature, which are nature's always trying to work, even when it looks and seems chaotic. And I mean the more than human world, which is also us, but nature and other benevolent forces are working to help us find balance, or to create some sort of sense of balance. That's how I relate to, that's the meaning I've made of it, but that's also the law of nature, that's how it actually works. And I think I love what you've shared about order and why we might need it. I think it would be difficult to integrate what is going on, and to also understand the difference between human-made chaos and generative chaos, which exists in nature, if we didn't have some order and structure and like discipline around a practice that would help us with discernment. Is this human-made chaos that I am creating and contributing to? Or is this like the seasons are shifting and this is why I feel this way in my body and this happens every year and it feels disorientating, but also it is what happens naturally. Like we need to be able to discern that, or I think, and I've felt this at different points in my life, we will be consumed by the human-made chaos. We will become the chaos instead of understanding we actually can create something different, more aligned with balance if we're able to tell the difference. But, you know, the systems that are, and humans make up systems that create this kind of chaos don't want us to actually be able to discern or see clearly as yoga teaches us to do.
Right. Right. Yeah. And that order is not necessarily rigid.
Right.
Which is the place that, right? It's like, it's like what I love this phrase of like infrastructure, right? Like the infrastructure of yoga. You know, the infrastructure is not, you know, the roads are not, you know, the car driving on the road. Right. But that you need the sort of like, what is the what is the like, the directionality? What is the matrix of of thought, of understanding what we're experiencing?
Yes, so we can tell the difference. I just think we need to be able to, because my experience at this moment in time on our planet is that most of us are overwhelmed. Many of us are distracted. We might have many responsibilities too. I mean, I'm like caretaking my mother in so many ways, and that's a full-time job. And also doing what we do in the world, or trying to. And so there's just, and a lot of people are tired and also fearing for their lives. You know, there's just a lot going on. And so we need something, some practice, some principle, use that word, that we can return to, some, which I think creates structure. And I also really just love structure, but we need that as a collective, I think, if we are, you know, to be able to make it through this. I think we need that. And it may look different for every person, but we need to know, like, this is where we wish to go. Like, this is what we desire.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a perfect framing then of like, is there one, maybe two? Are there principles that you are returning to right now to like provide that kind of infrastructure for yourself in the midst of all of the chaos? I mean, ICE arrived in New Orleans over the weekend. So that's the reality that I'm sitting in. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought about this question a lot. And I mentioned the law of nature, this balance, which is a principle I return to, which informs practices for me. So what practices bring me back into balance, or bring a room if I'm in a group? What might help a group come back into balance? And maybe there's a little more chaos that happens before we can return to that, like chaos magic. Maybe we need to work with that too. I'm not opposed to that at all. Right, to let the sort of unraveling happen to a certain point, and then the integration and wholeness, so we can return to that. To let some of the reactivity emerge, so then we can understand what's going on and why, and get some of that energy out. That's what I mean when I say chaos and chaos magic and unraveling. So I'd say that, all in order to find balance. Another, there are two other principles, practices, and one is about witnessing. From yoga, you know, becoming the seer or witness of our experience. And I say our because I mean mine, but also ours. I'm part of this collective and interconnected to all things. And this just came to me, this witnessing, because what I've noticed over the last year of doing a lot more caretaking and like nervous system deregulation or dysregulation because of my just mom and all that's going on and has been going on in like crisis mode, I've noticed there have been many times where I've been able to witness myself in interaction with my mom and to be like, do you want to do that? And it's like, slow this down enough. I mean, it feels like magic in a way, actually, to be like, can you turn the energy in this direction instead? What happens if you try this? Even though it's probably a second or 5 seconds where I'm doing the witnessing and then I discern like, oh, what is the response I actually want? It's quick, but it doesn't feel quick. It's like slowing down time enough to think about, okay, you're feeling like this and you're feeling like your mom's daughter, but you're actually in the role of being the mother now. How does that feel and how do you want to respond? Right? And what is the like child part of you need? And you're talking to your mom in this moment who needs something. So how do you respond? So it's probably a practice, but it is it is part of the philosophy of it. What do we need to practice to become the witness of our experience so that we can practice discernment? That feels like a practice, a principle, and it feels like the application of that to the collective would help us slow down enough to actually create less chaos. There's that. And then the third one that came to me is more about shamanic work, which I think shows up in other spiritual practices or nature-based practices or lineages around the reality we're in and non-ordinary reality or other realms of experience. Yoga definitely talks about this. Like, we're not just in these human bodies. There are different layers and levels of experience. And so in shamanic work, often it's what do we practice to access non-ordinary reality so that we can gather medicine and information and bring it back here now. So it's probably the principle of like reality, relative plane, and also other planes of existence and experience for the purpose of medicine and balance, right? It's not like I'm going to journey somewhere to not be in my body and not ever come back because I believe I can transcend this experience of being human on the planet now. I don't believe that at all. I'm here fully.
Right.
And I love journeying enough to gather information from ancestors, from other realms of experience. And often it's not an altered state in the sense of it taking something. It's more drumming, like listening to the sound of a drum or other music that will help us access different states of being so that we can return in our wholeness, more grounded, and make an offering.
Well, what's wild to me is that this is the first time anybody has said that, which is like, here we are in many ways, to me, it is like an anchor to any spiritual life is our existence is more than just material reality. That until we acknowledge that, there's not a whole lot else to talk about. I mean, like, okay, like maybe we can talk about like, why does the sun rise? But but like this of like, there is, for me, my experience of that non-ordinary reality often sometimes it's come in breath work and in meditation and singing practice, but more often for me, it's coming in breath work practices. And for exactly that, it's like, can I just, for this moment, open the door up to the other levels, the other things that might be happening right now, so that I have a fuller, like, I have like a more complete picture. I'll probably never have the whole picture, but I can have like just a little bit, another layer of information. Yeah. And I think to do that, we have to first say, like, there is information that we do not get in the material plane that we need.
That's right. I also, in listening to you, when you mentioned breath work and singing and opening the door, I also think journeying in this way we're speaking about now gets me closer to like feeling liberated. Because I'm not just my body. It's this, what might it feel like? I think about kirtan, and we just led that on this past weekend, and listening and watching people and being in that vibration together and people moving and what happens within the spirit when we're less encumbered and by the the physicality, the body, right, which happens all the time with singing and kirtan. There's a possibility for that to happen, right? Oh, this might be what it's like to feel liberated for a moment, right? And then how do I bring this into my relationships when I leave kirtan or whatever it might be for, it may be kirtan for someone and something else for someone else, but how do I bring that in?
For somebody.
Right? It might be church,
100%.
right? Feeling the spirit, getting happy like my grandmother did in church. It's like, oh, how does this expand my awareness and experience, and how can I actually carry this expansion into everything?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
That's the whole thing right there, right?
That's what I want.
I needed to have that conversation today. Is there a practice that you return to over and over again? Or is there something that feels, I think it's tricky with people who have like a lifetime of spiritual experience, right? It feels unfair to ask them to like zoom in on one.
Yeah.
But the wider world is very complicated right now. And it sounds like your personal world is heavy and hard right now.
Yeah.
Where's your refuge right now? I'm gonna steal your word.
That's great. It's a great way to frame it. I appreciate your question around this, because over the last year I have, and this feels like my grandmother too, actually, have started to work with Mary Magdalene in a way that I never have before. Mary Magdalene's in my backyard under the oak tree that I associate with my grandmother. I give her roses. I light a beeswax candle. I pray to her as the undoer of knots to undo some of this and unbind us. I've been reading the Gospel of Mary. She's on my altar behind me. I've been meditating every day to some Mary Magdalene, journeying to her. And I can't explain how this happened. Other than it was her feast day and I had some medical stuff going on, and we prayed to her, and it actually undid in this pretty significant way part of the medical things that were going on. I feel like it was all Mary. It's a much longer story, but like she came through in this way. And so it made me more curious about who is this archetype and energy, which is how I think about deities and just inviting her in. But again, I think my grandmother's hands are in this with inviting me to, she would say God or Jesus, right? And I think she's like, oh, maybe Mary is one of Michelle's archetypes, And
maybe I can sneak it in this way.
Right. I feel like that's what happened. I actually think that's what happened. And, Durga has been my Ishvara forever, and still is. And so I think my grandmother was like, oh, I don't necessarily know that archetype, but Mary Magdalene, Michelle's gonna get down, jam with Mary Magdalene, I think that may sound silly, but I think that's what happened, because I hadn't even really thought about her very much. And now I feel like I'm a student of Mary, right? And in reading her gospel, it has helped me just ground and also understand there are other realms of experience. And and also to work through, what the patriarchy did to Mary Magdalene, right? And these systems are trying to rewrite history and story, which is precisely what happened to her and her gospel.
Say more about that.
There are stories of Mary and Jesus and being lovers, and him sharing information with her that in different ways than the other disciples. And also she was given the gift of gnosis and vision. And that's why she wasn't when she was like, Jesus taught me these things and I had a vision. And that's how I know. People were like, you had a vision? We don't understand. Information doesn't come through in that way. Knowledge, gnosis doesn't emerge through vision, through sight, through psychic ability, through other realms. It feels shamanic to me. And I feel like because I think it's because also she was a woman. So how would Mary be given more information than male disciples? That's the patriarchy to me. and that she was privy to information, that she was there when the rock was rolled back, right? When she was there, so that there's more. People should read the Gospel of Mary if they want to know more, because it's actually quite beautiful. And I think we need to be honest about the history. And so it also feels aligned with my justice work, that Mary Magdalene and this whole story I didn't even understand, because no one in our church talked about Mary Magdalene. They talked about Mother Mary, not Mary Magdalene.
Yeah, they talk about Mother Mary, and the only time you might get some Mary Magdalene is washing people's feet around Easter. That's about as much as anybody, or how good Jesus was to be friends with, this.
And they were lovers, FYI, lovers, people.
Yeah, exactly. But no, but but
lover.
Are you going to hear that in a Black Baptist church on Sunday morning?
Hell no. Lover and beloved. That's who they were. Shiva and Shakti. Same. They were Ida and Pingala.
That's interesting.
They are the two energies that flow through us, right? Whatever name we have for those. That is what that represents. And yet systems try to deny, right, this energy of the feminine in this case, and divinity held within the feminine, regardless of gender. I'm not talking about gender or gender identity.
Sure. But also denying intuition, right? Denying non-rational thought, right? Received knowledge.
All of that. Yes. I'm glad you brought that in. Yes. That gnosis, how we gather information and trusting that versus the intellect and like reading a book and then it's true, the written word, right? So it's deep. So that's been my practice. Mary Magdalene's been my lady, and I'm learning a lot from her and going into her cave through meditation, sitting at the fire and allowing her to share different things with me.
Yeah. I love it so much. Do I have other questions for you? I don't know. That might be it's such a rich conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like that conversation is it's like, flourless chocolate cake. You know what I mean? Where you're just oh, this is so good. It's all,
yes,
little tiny bites of it at a time. I want to ask you about the bees. That is I'm yeah, okay, I have to ask.
I just had that thought.
Yeah.
So we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Share. Will you share just a little bit about beekeeping and your relationship with them? And
yeah. So I have 4 hives right now, and I've been keeping bees since 2019. And they came to me in a dream, and I had never taken a beekeeping class. And in my dream state, ordered what one needs to tend bees. But I'd never taken a class, so I really didn't know. But ordered everything, including the bees. And only understood what I had done when I saw the credit card receipt. And it's totally how it happened. I was like, you have just spent hundreds of dollars. It was 4 a.m. And I was like, I don't even know what am I going to do when they come? I don't know how to do this. So that feels aligned with how we were just talking about knowledge and intuition and what guides us. And I feel like the bees, who are known as psychopomps and they work between realms, came to me to help me expand my understanding of what it means to be here and there and everywhere. Spirit and soul, to understand there's more going on than what I can see with my eyes, and to feel into that. And much of that with them is through vibration. Although I watch them, but I listen to them. I hum with them. And I have learned more about community from the honeybees than any other being, about collective care and unity consciousness, which of course has been, that is connected to so many of the other lineages and themes we've discussed here. But just watching how they work for the good of the hive all of the time, and how they do not think of themselves as individuals, but instead as part of the collective. There's not even awareness of individual bees, right? It's the entire hive, including the infrastructure, the honeycomb, the nectar, the propolis, the pollen. So that has informed my work and practice and deepened my understanding of what is possible, of what is like. Often I think about what would it be like for humans. Bees are superorganisms, which is exactly what I just described as, the whole hive is how they think of themselves. They're part of the whole. They don't think of themselves as parts, right? And so, but as an individual, as a human, I've been conditioned to think of myself as an individual, not in relationship with other beings. And so often I think about what it would be like for humans to think of themselves, for us to think of ourselves as superorganisms, right? As I am part of the whole. That is my orientation. My orientation is not I, or me, right? It is us.
We. Yeah.
Yeah, it's we. And there's so much more about the bees. We rely on the bees for so much. And yes, the tangible resources like food, but I think for these deeper spiritual lessons that we've talked about. And right now, the bees, I've lost hives before during winter time. And it's devastating because often it's because of climate change and climate chaos and these temperatures that are unpredictable, and one day it's 50 degrees and then the next day it's 20 degrees. That is what during winter time often causes death. There's starvation that can happen, but that's not why my hives in the past, it's not why they've transitioned. And when they've transitioned, the hives I've lost, every time my mother has been sick. And so I've understood this as they're working with, and even when they came to me, when I had that dream, my mom was sick. And I think there was the spiritual piece of that and their ability to work between realms. And they showed up in this way. And they continue to. And right now I have this hive that I combined. So I had 5. I combined 2 because they wouldn't make it through winter otherwise. And I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if they are, what they look like they're doing is gathering pollen and resources to sustain the hive. And also there are signs that there's transition happening, which is always happening, but I think we're not sure. We're not sure if they're staying in physical form. That's what I'll say. And if they will make it through winter or not. And I think it's interesting that the timing of this, because I have the same question about my mom. Is she staying? Is she in physical form? Is she transitioning? I mean, we're always doing that. But what's happening? And this hive is like mirroring that. And so they're wise. The more than human world is wise. And I get to view that through so many parts of the more than human world, and specifically a direct relationship with bees. And the practical lessons, right? They're workers, right? Working for the whole, and the spiritual lessons of what does it mean to gather resources for a hive that may transition? What is that? Do we continue to work even as we're in transition and there's death, is how I understand this. And they are doing that.
Yeah, and that even if the hive may not make it through the winter, and that doesn't mean that they work any less. Right. They're not working harder or less.
They're just,
They're doing the next, they're just, for whatever reason, I'm like, right, they're doing their dharma, right? This is the thing where they're like, do your work.
Do your work. They show up and do their work.
And leave the results.
It's beautiful. That's beautiful. I feel like that's beautiful. That's part of the medicine we need now. Yeah.
It also feels really profound in the lineage of change makers, right? That none of them, in the same way that none of us will ever see the full results of our work.
Yeah. Right.
That it doesn't mean that you work harder or less. You just you keep moving.
Which is part of the order and the structure and what the infrastructure inspires. It's like we have a place in which to work. We have something to offer. We have resources to gather. We have medicine to make. We have
Yeah.
sweetness to experience. That's what they eat, the honey in the wintertime to make it through. But they've done all the work to store that. But I've planted the flowers for them to gather. It's just this web of beauty.
I mean, so you're part of the hive, is what you're saying.
Well, we all are. We just have, yeah.
You're just much more aware of it. Awareness was the word that you used before.
Yeah.
Witness, you are like, you have that
Yeah.
witness to your, membership. To all of our membership. What a sweet conversation. Is there anything that you want to share with folks before we close? I'll link up all your books and all your good stuff that's coming, and y'all should read every single one of them and go be with Michelle in person if you can find her nearby.
I would love that. I want to offer gratitude for this conversation and you and asking me to be here with you now in this way, and the oracles for weaving us together and weaving this conversation. It's like, which is more than a conversation, right? This experience. So I want to say that I feel deeply grateful that we're in each other's lives, and I'm going to come see you sometime. Like, I'm going to come hang out with you sometime.
Come on. Say that. Anytime.
I told Sean that. I was like, I need to just go visit here. Like, I need to go. We need to just do that and do this together in person.
I'm on board. I'm on board with that. I know I have had like little dream like reveries about like gathering some of the, really as many of the people who I've had the chance to interview, and like getting, pulling as many of us together, because the volume of wisdom and like just how extraordinary every individual person is, and what we have to, I don't know. I think it's like, oh, right. It's like we're not doing this on our own. But it often can feel like we're doing it on our own.
Yeah, it can. And we're not. No. We're not. Yes, we're part of this broader lineage. Yeah.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in, Curious Hearts. If this episode was useful, I hope you'll follow the show or leave a review or share it with somebody who you think needs it. And if you're craving support on your own spiritual path or seeking some meaningful work, you can find ways to work with me at veralester.com. Otherwise, until next time, please stay grounded in that curiosity that you've got and keep turning towards what matters. See y'all soon.